This is a call, it's an invocation. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one. We talked about this a while back about the beginning of monotheism. In a world of multiple gods, this is the call of one God. And the first part will be robust. And the second part will be intimate. And if you like, we can do it a second time. Or maybe I'll do it first. I'll do it first.
Let's say this.
Okay.
Yeah. You start.
Chris, could you open the door? Just open the door. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod, Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Blessed is God's name, whose kingdom is forever and ever. You want to try that? Okay, ready? Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. What did he say?
It says, Hear, O Israel, God is Lord, God is one. Blessed is his name, whose kingdom is forever.
Is there anybody else who doesn't have a prayer group? If you don't have a paper,
I have an extra one here.
Oh, Dottie's is up here. So those are your extras. Okay.
There's an extra one here. And here.
So today, we're going to present Passover in two ways. And he's going to talk with you and fill your heart and your mind. And Janet and I are going to step away from that, and we're going to fill your soul with song. And Annie, go ahead. Oh,
We're going to do King Hamatov
we're not going
first.
to Janet.
We need Janet up here. Hine Matovu Manayim is actually from Psalm 133. It means, behold how good and pleasant it is for brothers and sisters to live together in unity. And that's what we're singing. It's one of my favorites as well.
So we're going to sing this one twice, right? 3 times.
3 times. Every single time, right?
3 times.
So there are actually 3 different melodies, so we're going to kind of lead you.
Yeah, go for it.
Hine ma tovu manahim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manahim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, ay 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 ay. Hine ma tov, ay 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 ay. Hine ma tovu manahim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manahim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Thanks, Janet.
So, everybody knows the story of Exodus, right? I mean, is there anybody here that hasn't seen the Ten Commandments? Was Charleston has done? You know, that's really what the story is, and the story of Passover is really, in the Jewish religion, you know, we tell stories to help us learn our lessons and remember things. And so, what is this story about? Well, the Jews had left the land that they were living in, and they moved to Egypt, and thinking that they were going to be safe. And it turned out that they were enslaved. So, when Moses was born, his mother sent him down the Nile to safety. And as it happens, the Pharaoh's daughter found him in the basket in the river and brought him to Father and said, "Father, please, you know, this is my baby now. I'm going to keep him." And so he grew up thinking that he was the son of the Pharaoh until he saw an Egyptian kill a Jewish slave and beat him to death. And he started recognizing who he was, and he awoke to who he was. And you know, Moses was a Christ, in my opinion. I mean, just as Jesus was. He was a Christed one. He was divinely lit up. And he knew that he had to do something different. He had to take his people to freedom. So, you know, as we know, he went to God and he found the burning bush. The burning bush actually sent him to God up on Mount Sinai, where he was given these commandments. And it's my understanding that there were much more than 10 in the beginning. And when he came down from the mountain, he saw all the people worshiping idols, which was not supposed to be something that was done within the Jewish religion. You don't, you know that God was not an idol. You don't make images of God. You don't even, in fact, in Jewish writing, they G-D. They're not even supposed to show the whole names, the Elohim, any of that. So he was angered and he smashed the tablets, and he went back again for more. He had a bad day. He went back and, God did give them back to him. And he learned, he led the people to freedom. And it was a big fight. It was a huge fight. When they finally turned to God and they said, we're ready for our freedom. That's when, the curses came along, all the different things that happened. And so at Passover time, we have a Seder, which is the telling of the story. And it can take a very, very, very long time. So, we're doing a very Reader's Digest version today. But in Passover, there are many representations. And the representations can cross over to many different items. So we'll talk first traditionally about the Pesach plate. Pesach means Passover in Hebrew. And what goes on the plate and what it's for. Then we're going to go into a little bit more of a modern kind of an energy. And we're going to take a moment to look at ourselves. Where are we enslaved? And have an opportunity to write some things down, to remove some things. And then there's ceremonial items back in the back that as you're going to your snacks after church today, stop by and do a little bit of a ceremony. Dip your parsley in the salt water. We'll go through what that's for. And they have a little bit of matzah to celebrate the holiday and its traditional meanings. Okay. For the camera.
Oh, okay, now show it.
Okay.
There we go, thank you.
Okay, now show it. Here we go. So this is the Pesach plate.
Thank you.
In tradition, every table at a Seder should have a Pesach plate. This, I believe, was my grandmother's. My mother gave it to me a few years back. And on here, it has the English interpretation of what we're going to have. But I'm going to open up my Judaism, for Dummies book, and we'll go through a few things. But here is a space for a roasted egg. The roasted egg represents springtime, renewal,
Easter.
the rebirth.
No.
Well, Jesus was Jewish, and what was the Last Supper? It was a Passover Seder. So, and the Jews were actually considered pagan at one point. They were called a pagan tribe. When I started studying a lot about the histories of different religions, I found out the Jews were considered pagans. And I thought, okay, I have a reason to be happy to be Jewish in this lifetime. Because I is a pagan. But Rosh Hashanah does represent springtime, renewal, rebirth, all of those kinds of things. You've got your bitter herbs. Bitter herbs can be represented by a few different things. They can be represented by onions, but the most traditional is usually horseradish. I have horseradish back there. The purpose of the bitter herbs is to remember why, the bitterness of being enslaved, okay? Find some of my notes here in case I forget what I'm doing here. And let's see, the next one is your shank bone, your lamb shank. So how many are familiar with the story that you know that in the story of Passover, what happened was when the people were finally ready to leave, that God had said that the last curse that I'm going to put upon the Egyptians is their firstborn sons will all die in the night. So each of you of the chosen tribe will take blood from a lamb and you will anoint it on your door so that the angel of death will know to pass over your home and not take your children. That is how the name Passover came about. So the lamb shank obviously is representative of that. The next one is your charoset. What charoset is, I made some, there's some over there. Charoset is, okay, so just a warning for allergies, by the way. It has apples and walnuts and honey and some cinnamon and some grape juice. It was supposed to be made with red wine, but out of respect for those who do not drink, I wanted to make sure that it was alcohol-free today. Because another tradition, of course, is the drinking of the wine. Well, we're drinking of the grape juice today. So what the charoset is it's very, very, very sweet. And the reason why it's so sweet, there's raisins in it as well, by the way. The reason why it's sweet is to remind us of the bittersweet times. So actually the tradition is to take some matzah and put some charoset on it and a little bit of the bitter herbs so that you can taste how sweet freedom is, but remember that little bit of bitterness that you had to go through in order to get to that place. Next is called lettuce, but it's not really what we call lettuce on here. We call it, let me find my matzah plate, or my Pesach plate notes. Hold on, because I forget. It's like charoset, but it has a slightly different name. Chris, do you know off the top of your head?
In Silicon Valley, it's probably kale.
Yeah. It's called chazaret. Chazaret. A little different than charoset, okay? It literally means lettuce. It's a second bitter herb. A lot of times romaine lettuce is used, but kale works because it's bitter, or can be bitter. And people use this as well to, they can also use the greens of the horseradish, fresh horseradish with carrots. Just representation. Next one is your parsley. Parsley is really a cleansing herb. The reason why they put parsley on a plate is it cleanses your palate. So that's the reason for it, okay? So when they did that, they put it on there so that the actual ceremonial tradition is we take parsley and we hold on to it for a moment to put our energy of letting go of the places that were enslaved. And we dip it in salt water, and the salt water is to remind us, and then we eat it, to remind us of the tears that were cried. In today's world, there's a lot of tears being cried all the time. We have people that are refugees everywhere. And we have people who are not treating people in a human way. And prejudice is becoming so much more prevalent today. The harm that we're doing to people is like we're repeating our history, and they keep saying that history is supposed to be here for us to learn our lessons and not to repeat it. So this is why we all gather together, because none of us want to see that. We want to see a life and a world filled with joy and purpose and happiness, and us being able to release our own inner slavery so that we can help others to step into that positive light. That's what Passover is to me today. So also representing Passover on the altar right now are 2 cups. In the very, very traditional Jewish religion, there's 1 cup placed in the center of the altar. Now, I read something interesting yesterday, and that's for Elijah, the prophet, okay? We open our doors in the middle of a Seder to invite not only Elijah the prophet in, if he chooses to come and join us in our meal, but also for anybody who's hungry to come and join and have some food, have some feast with us. Because believe me, once you get through the Seder, there's always a nice feast. Unfortunately, we will have one next year with everything. So the reason why I have 2 cups here is the first one is for Elijah, and the second one is for Miriam. So, and before I go into the Miriam cup, I see April going whoop, whoop, whoop back there. The reason why Elijah, if there's a 5th cup of wine, is actually, in Jewish tradition, you drink 4 glasses of wine during the Seder, and there seems to be an argument about different sects, apparently, as to whether or not there should have been a 5th glass of wine. So they put out the extra one for, not just for Elijah, because he's going to come and drink, but it's also to represent that question of, is there supposed to be 4 or is there supposed to be 5? So one of the traditions that people have found that they started to do is they take one of their glasses of wine and each person at the Seder table pours a little bit into the glass to honor Elijah, our prophet, and to honor the possibility that there could be a 5th glass of wine. And I believe that in some tradition you could also pass it around at the end for everybody to drink off of it. Isn't that wonderful?
That's wonderful.
I love that. So the new tradition of the Miriam's cup, I'm going to read a little bit out of the Judaism for Dummies book because I really love what they say here about it. So it's one of the most popular new additions to the Passover Seder. It's called Kos Miriam, which is Miriam's cup. It sits at the Seder table right next to Elijah's cup. And this cup is filled with water. And rather than wine, because it's honoring the Talmudic story. Do you know what the Talmud is? Okay. The Talmudic story of Miriam's well, which brought water as the Israelite tribes traveled through the desert, just as the prophetess Miriam, Moses' sister, soothed and nurtured the children of Israel during their journey. Miriam's cup honors the motherly spirit of God that works through all of us. And it honors all the women in our history who have nurtured and healed our people personally. So that's each and every one of you here who's a healer. Each and every woman who has raised and nurtured her children. Each and every person who has helped raise other people's children. Those who have adopted, those who have fostered, those who just lend a helping hand when they get a possibility. We are all nurturers, and in my opinion, you can be Miriam whether you're in a male body or a female body, because there are nurturers in every body. So it says here that in a Seder, after drinking the 2nd glass of wine, the leader invites each person, or sometimes only the women, at the table to pour a little bit of water in their cups, into the empty goblet. So then the leader can raise a tambourine, whee, and lead the participants in a joyous song. I have no idea what that joyous song is, but that would be really cool if I could find that out. So I'll see if I could find it out for next year. Okay. So now is a time for freedom for all of us, right? We can't always be out there in the world saving everybody, but what we can do is work on ourselves, right? And I really seriously believe that we can do this, and that mirrors it out there. So a lot of people ask when it's Passover time, because there are 4 questions that are asked. And I think one of the questions, and I'm not even sure if it's one of the 4 questions, so Chris, tell me if I'm wrong, but is why would God punish people? What does God punish? And it was really neat to read that Judaism doesn't teach that God's a punishing God. God is an ever-loving God. What they believe in is free will. And I truly believe that we were actually brought here in this world to find out who we are not. Because what are we really? We're divine beings. If we were born already knowing we're completely divine and we were perfect from the minute that we were born, then what makes us think that we could possibly have anything to live for in a physical realm, right? We could just be angels and guides. We came here to find out what we're not. So what happens with that? Lessons, angers, hatreds. I mean, let's get real. It happens, right? But it's interesting how a lot of times when we're angry and we're upset, it's in reaction to another issue that has nothing to do with what it is that's going on at the time. And it's always a resolution or a result of something else, right? So as we evolve as human beings, we want to recognize our own spiritual paths and really, really, really give homage to that, okay? So it's all about choice, right? And I think that what I'd like to do right now, and we're going to take some time to share, and Corky, I'm going to ask you first to turn off the tape for a few minutes, okay?